All right, can everybody hear me? All right, somebody, oh, Bianca, good. So saying yes. Now, remember, we kind of did this, went to this platform. So if you want to put your video on so you can see everybody, and if you want to chime in or say something, you're welcome to. So we want as much input and interaction as can be possible. I am at our vision therapy clinic up in Yakima today, so we're going to be going over the VTS-4, just some different protocols, different things that I do with this. And so if you have ideas or thoughts, stop me and we will discuss them. We will not be able to go through everything, but we'll kind of talk about it as we can. Unfortunately, the way that I have the room set up, I won't be able to see the chat box very well. So if you need to get my attention, please interrupt me, and that will work better than trying to just hit on the chat box. We'll give it a few more minutes here. All right, some are saying that it doesn't give an option for video. Does everybody have the option for audio? Does anybody have option for audio? All right, try that. I tried to put that all could share. Maybe that will work. As you can see, we're learning all these aspects. Okay. Share screen. All can share. Okay. That's all that allows me there. Okay. Well, hopefully, if you should be able to unmute yourself now and talk according to this. If not, I will work on that and we'll try to get a better setup next week. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and begin. And again, this is going to be on the VTS-4. So I'm going to be a little bit in the little screen and also a little bit on the bigger screen, but I wanted the bigger screen to be able to see what's going on the VTS-4. Most of us are familiar with this. Most of us have used it in a clinics. As I've traveled to different clinics, I've seen it in different locations. And what this allows us to do, so we've been going through stages of fusion. We've been going through how we can add different things, how we can modify. And one of the main things that we want to remember, right, is in order to have fusion, you have to have motor alignment. The eyes have to get to the right spot, and then there has to be sensory fusion. So ways that we can do this, we talked about concrete ways that we create this. So phys dip, holding their thumb up in front of them, looking past it, seeing two. looking right at it, seeing one. That's the beginning of motor alignment. It's the beginning of that physiological diplopia, knowing that both eyes are on. Then more of a concrete, we're talking about vectograms, lifesaver cards, things that are tangible, that are actual items that they can see. As you start to get a little bit more what we would call virtual or making a new world, we can even put a little bit of vectogram in that, even though that's a little bit more of a tangible, because there's actual targets, they're plastic, they're a little bit more concrete, but less concrete than like the Brock string. All right, so now the vectogram is adding even more of an abstract, okay? It's going more away from the concrete. So this is where we can start to get into giving them a new environment, giving them a new educational novelty, something that they could just experience for the first time, all right? I'm hoping that we'll be able to see everything that is on this screen. And if you're familiar with the VTS4, that you can have yours up and going, or you at least have an idea of what is on it. If you don't have a VTS4 and the things that I'm talking about, it just doesn't really make sense, feel free to give me a call later on, and maybe we can set up a time that we can go over this individually, and it will make a little bit more clarification at that time. So when I start a patient, okay, when I'm first getting ready for a patient, all right, you have to remember the different people that we're going to be using this with. So you have your skills case. So maybe they're convergence insufficiency. And mainly on that one, we're working on ranges, okay? We're working on amplitude, how far they can come in, how far they can diverge out. So their convergence in, their convergence out. And then we're working on flexibility. The facility of it is how far can they come in and then jump back out, and then come in a little bit closer and then jump back out, and that flexibility. But with our CIs, CEs, you know, those that do not have strabismus, do not have amblyopia, do not have some other issue that is going on, a lot of the times we're not really worried about suppression. We're not worried about, you know, anomalous correspondence, eccentric fixation, all those different things that you do with the strabismus case. So if it's just a skills case, then it's going to be a little bit easier. You may start with the dog in the ring, as we're going to talk about that. But I'm going to give this as if I'm working with somebody that, you know, they've never seen stereo in their life. They've never had that opportunity. They've never had that aha moment. And even if I have had a little bit of success with somebody, maybe a CI that's a strong CI, this is a way to begin to kind of prime the pump, okay? So one of the things that we talked about in the previous is having them wear red-green glasses, and they can wear those red-green glasses at home, and it really doesn't matter what they're doing. They can wear, you know, work with a white balloon or a white stuffed animal or something white, or just going throughout their days wearing those red-green glasses, because it's kind of a back door into the brain. The world says it can't be red, it can't be green, it must be a blend of the two. So it's just a very passive way. So we can do the same thing with this, is if you go ahead and go into vergences, you have all these options that are here, and hopefully you can see a few of those. You might not be able to see the actual names of them because of where I have to put that camera, but in this, you have what's called vergence mode, and you have manual, which means that I can take this controller and I control it, okay? And I'll hold that over here. Or they can control it, but it means that somebody is actually using it. Or you can have it on auto, which is an auto preset, meaning the computer is just going to go through what you set it up for. As the VTS4, if you've never used it before, you do have to have the glasses that come with it. So these are 3D glasses. It is very important when you hand them to the kids that you make sure that you turn them on. There's been times where they've been going and they're not seeing any depth. They're not seeing any depth. They're just seeing two. And I find out I just failed to turn the glasses on, all right? So in order to have stereopsis, what we have to have is what's called the retinal displacement, okay? So the one eye has one image, the other eye has the other image, and then the brain combines those two, and that's what gives us stereopsis, all right? So what these glasses do is just like on Polaroid glasses with vectograms, one lens sees one image, the other lens sees the other image, and then the brain puts those two images together. So the glasses are important, okay? Making sure that they're set up and that they're on and where you're working. Now, when I'm working the VTS4, I usually set them up about 36 inches away, about 3 to 4 feet back, okay? A couple of reasons that I do that is I want them to have a lot of space in front of them. I want there to be a lot of peripheral of the room around about them. I don't want them right up next to that screen. So if I'm working with somebody and I'm trying to get it to where I'm kind of priming that pump, instead of going to the manual and just starting it out with dog and ring and sliding that forward and back. Now, let's go back. I will actually click on auto. And then you have choices here, okay? Some of them have a little bit more central. Some of them are very, like the dog in the ring, the cat in the ring, that allow you to have a peripheral with a central target. It'll add fizz dip to it. But down along here, there are some that just have a little bit of depth of field. So I'll go to auto. I'll put it to where there's not really stops. That means I don't have a break point on the right or a break point on the left. And I can set how long I want it to go for. I can set the speed on how fast it moves. And then I can limit how much base out. So if I think about vectogram, a lot of times I'm doing that C, right, through 3. So 3 being convergence, C being divergence. And I'm just working that range there. So I'll come down here and I'll limit the base out. I don't want them converging any more than 10. And then I'll set the limit on the divergence. And let's say that divergence, don't want them diverging any more than 3, maybe 4, okay? And so I have that already preset, ready to go. And then as soon as I hit now, it's automatically moving for you, okay? And I don't preload the patient. I don't tell them what I want them to see. I don't give them any ideas. A lot of times I'll use a yoga ball, sit them down upon the yoga ball. That way they have a lot of vestibular input. They have a lot of balancing, is creating neural pathways of keeping everything active at one time. Place the glasses on them and then just have them watch this. Okay, now why this is important is if you have somebody who has never seen stereo before, even if they're amblyopic, even if they're strabismus, all those different things, there are still stereopsis cells within that retina. There's still stereopsis cells that have the ability to recognize depth. It's just that the brain has never done it before. So as that is going back and forth, it is creating that in and out, in and out, all right? And just like when we worked with the Marston ball, when I start swinging that Marston ball to them at the beginning, I just say, I just want you to watch the ball. I just want you to notice what's going on. I don't tell them anything, and I let them see that ball come in. I let them see that ball go out, and let the brain kind of just take some time to absorb that before any questions are going on. So with this patient, as that is coming in and as it's going out, I'm just letting them absorb it. I'm just letting them look at it. After a few minutes, after they've had a chance, and I'll say, do you notice anything? What are you noticing? And then we'll go through that. So this is a way that even if you don't think that they're gonna have stereo, you don't even think that they're definitely not gonna be able to localize, you're kind of like, why am I gonna do this? This is just a good way to begin to introduce them to the VTS4, get them to be able to see a little bit, or at least experience, even if it's subconscious, that in and out. The beauty of this picture is you have different fish. The dolphin is definitely going to be what's closest or what's farthest. but there's also a little bit of depth of field. The different fish are at different depths, and so maybe they don't see one, but they see another. So it gives them a better chance of seeing depth than just on one plane, like if it's just the coits, like the dog in the ring. This gives them a much greater field of depth, just like using the clown vectorgram versus the coits. You're giving them more opportunity of a Panham's fusional range to get depth during that time. Okay, so I'm going to we have our keyboard for this back underneath. So when you want to get out of the VTS4, you just hit escape on your keyboard, and that's going to bring you back. Then you can use your mouse. Hit return, okay? So now I'm going to go back to manual, and we're on Stereopsis 2 over here on the right-hand side. It has all your different ones. You have choices, simultaneous perception. Do both eyes see an item at the same time? You have stage 1, flat fusion. You have flat fusion 2, and then you have stereopsis, okay? Now, for those of you that are brand new to this, this is something that you'll probably have to hear a number of times. For those of you that have been doing this for a while, we talk about stage 1 fusion, stage 2, stage 3. But if you think about it, sometimes what is the hardest thing for a patient to do? That is motor alignment, getting something to align right over with the other one just perfectly. Well, simultaneous perception, or stage 1 fusion 2, that is getting those to align just perfectly over the top, right? Well, what helps guide motor alignment? Well, that's our magnocellular system, right? Our peripheral system. It is the glue that tells us where everything is. And so that magnocellular system can help us to gain motor alignment. So I, a lot of times, will start with Stereopsis 2, okay, with stereo, and use that global fusion and use that gross fusion to help them to gain motor alignment. So when you think about doing your fusion cards, you think about doing some of your activities, if they really struggle with motor alignment, you may not want to start with simultaneous perception and flat fusion 1, because those are very central for 1, and they require the most motor control to keep it held together. You might start with stereopsis and use that to help gain, and then work back until they have that motor control, okay? So I'm going to go on, and we're going to keep on stereopsis 2, and I'm going to choose the dog in the ring, okay? Now, the dog in the ring, very simple. You have a dog in the front, you are in the center, then you have the ring that's going around the outside of it, and at the top you have a plus and a minus sign, okay? Now the plus and the minus sign is just like you would have it on the coits of the vectogram. One is the right eye, one is the left, and if they suppress one, then you know that that eye is suppressing. But you have to remember that that is central suppression, okay? So there are times where you can still have gross peripheral fusion where they're seeing depth with that ring, and they're seeing phys dip with the dog, or they're seeing where the dog is, whether the dog is closer or the ring is closer. They're doing all the right cues of spatial orientation, but they may not have the ring or the plus sign at the top, or it may be alternating back and forth. As I'm doing this activity, that is fine with me, okay? I'm not really worried about the central stereo or the central suppression. At the same time, I'm doing a gross peripheral stereoptic activity, okay? I would rather them to have the ring, rather them have depth, rather them have silo, and we're gonna work through all those stages, than worry about, can you see the plus sign? Can you get the plus sign? Can you make the plus sign line up perfectly, okay? That is not the goal right now. The goal is just to get fusion and to get some sense of silo and some movement. All right. So neat thing is about the VTS4 is we talk about gross peripheral bigger. So if you use your arrow keys, you can actually make that ring bigger, or you can make that ring smaller. So if I need to, I will make this ring really big, okay? Just like if it was gross projected points off of the silver screen, I can make that as big as I want. The other thing that you want to remember is over on your letters, if you hit the D button, then down here in the corner, and you can't see it, I'm sorry, but down here in the corner will pop up all the numbers that you need. It gives you the current base out, it gives you the highest base out, it gives you base in, all that information. So now, on my manual, I can take and I can move, oh, it's probably not gonna do it. Sorry, I'm gonna have to make sure. So this is good. If you don't connect at the beginning with your controller, then sometimes it's not going to work. So now we had to go out. No. So this is where its connectivity is going on, and so I didn't have this connected, and so I had to come back out, and now it's found it's connected, and now I'm loading the application back. So now we're back, we picked divergences, we have it over here on manual, we have it on stereopsis 2, we have the dog in the ring. I make it a little bit bigger, and now I can control that ring. So I can spread it apart, or I can bring it back in, okay? And then if I hit the D, now at the bottom of it, for those of you that are new and you haven't seen it before, you can understand that if I hit the right side, I'm going into base in. If I go to the left side, now I'm going into base out. And so you can actually see those numbers so that you're not trying to figure out what it is that they should be seeing. Okay, so now I have my patient, they're sitting on that yoga ball or standing. I try to do all this type of activity either standing or on a yoga ball versus sitting in a chair, because I want as much vestibular input going on that's going to help them to fight suppression and to keep everything going. So just as I did with the fish, I'm going to have them looking, and then all I'm doing is moving left and right, okay? All I'm doing is massaging back from base in around 5 to base out around 5, okay? So I'm just rocking that back and forth, just moving that back and forth. And the very first thing that I want them to see is just movement. Do they see movement? Same as when we talk about vectograms, okay? So do they see it move when I'm moving it? Do they see it move the opposite direction when I'm moving it? Second is direction of movement. Are they saying that it's moving closer and farther, or in and out, they may say? Or are they seeing that it's moving right and left? If they say that the ring is moving to the right, or the dog is moving, then I know that they're suppressing, and all that they're doing is seeing one of the rings expand, giving that greater distance of retinal disparity, okay? I want to make sure that they're seeing forward and back. So then, as they see, and they're now in that base in, and they're like, oh, it's moving away from me, okay? Well, now if I do the opposite, what is it doing? And they're like, now it's moving towards me, okay? So then I ask them, I go, now, when it's moving away, what happens to the ring? When it's moving in, what happens to the ring? And now I'm looking for size, okay? So as it moves in, do they recognize that it's smaller in? And as it moves away, do they recognize that it's large out? So we're getting that silo recognition. The last thing I do is I say, okay, now we have this dog in this ring. And unfortunately, the dog's not very smart, okay? So he doesn't know when his toy is in front of him, and he doesn't know when his toy is behind them. So what I want you to do is I want you to tell me, is the ring in front of the dog or is the ring behind the dog, okay? And so as I go and I bring it into base out, they already have told me that they see movement. They already tell me that they know that there's forward and back. Now they tell me in location to where the dog is, how close is it? Is it in front of the dog? Is the dog behind it? And then going back the opposite way, is it behind the dog, okay? Has it moved behind where they perceive that dog to be? So now we have forward and back, we have size, and we have location compared to where something else is. The last thing I do is give them a dowel, okay? And I'll hold that out. I have a little green tip on that dowel. And so now they have that dowel, and as it comes in, do they localize in? And then as it goes out, do they localize out, that it's out that direction? And so I can use this now, that now they're localizing according to the space that they're at, okay? Where is that in space, okay? So this is the dog in the ring. Now, when I do this, where are my goal points? Where am I trying to get them to? Well, you have to remember, and you can talk to your doctor about this, when we diverge, okay, how far can a person diverge? Well, how far can a person accommodate, right? So 20 feet and beyond, there's no more, that's when we relax our accommodation out the farthest, and from there on, that's as far as we're gonna accommodate out. That is the same with how far we should diverge. It's not that we diverge, and then if we're looking 3 miles away, we just keep diverging our eyes out, or would be way, we'd all be exotropes. So the distance that we should be diverging out to is only the pupillary distance, all right? So if they're 36 inches away from this screen, and then I'm putting base in to make them diverge farther out, there is a place where there should be no, I shouldn't be adding any more base in, or they're going to go past, they're going to break past their pupillary distance in order to maintain fusion. So what I found is I look at these numbers down here, and base in from ages like 7 to 9, I'm somewhere around the 12, okay, base in 12. If they can diverge out to base in 12, that's great. If they're over the age of 12, then it's somewhere around 13 or 14, and that's great. I pretty much don't take anybody past 14, even adults, okay? Base in 15 diopters, they should have a pretty big head and pretty wide pupillary distance. So somewhere between 12 and 15, that's your range. Nobody should, in my opinion, nobody should be going past that on a divergence of this stage, okay? Because again, it's very virtual. You could just keep taking them and taking them and taking them, but we're trying to look right around that 13 base in, 14 base in from this 36 inches away from the target, okay? Now, contrary, convergence, okay? We're looking for amplitude, right? How far can they come in? But it also has to be based on how easy, how non-symptomatic. I mean, if they're able to crank it in and they're just bringing it in, but their face is all involved and they're just, it hurts and their tears are coming down their cheeks, that's not the goal, okay? The goal is smooth vergences, being able to hold that, being able to feel it, and being able to replicate it without symptoms, without pain. So I'm looking for about 35 diopters. Any more base out than that, and you're literally bringing that closer and closer and closer. And as we discussed before, we have kids that are already taking their phones and holding them way too close, right? Well, I don't really want to train the child to crank in their convergence system to where it's just right up here and they're just tight, okay? So just about 35, 36 diopters is about where I break through. Now, that doesn't mean when you're first getting started and you're working with them and you're working that amplitude and you're working those ranges that you might go a little bit more than that. But I'll tell you, this computer, you can take that base out and you can just keep going and going and going and going and going and going. And I've seen, you know, I've played around with it myself, and you can get up to like in the 50s, okay? Well, when you start getting that much and you're working out, so there's 41, okay? Now you're going all the way out, and there's 55. I mean, you're talking about huge amounts of convergence, all right? And then you have in play accommodation, and we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to involve that right now. So just try to keep around that 35 base in, or base out about 35, 36, and then base in somewhere around 13 to 15, depending on the age and the size of the pupillary distance of that, okay? So that's kind of the dog in the ring, again, to escape, and then you can just read those numbers, and when I chart, I just put dog and ring, base out, put how far they went, base in, how far they went, and then able to, and then just chart, you know, able to localize, able to see silo, able to, and then list any symptoms or any pain points or anything that was a problem. And then my conclusion is next week I will be working on such and such and such and such, okay? So now, after dog and ring, you can load it, and one of the ways that I like to load it is you use this spiral angle, okay? So on the spiral angle, again, I can blow it up, make it a little bit bigger, you know, keep that gross peripheral, but this is going to add more of a central and an accommodative load of keeping those letters clear. And then I'll usually have them, again, 4 feet back away from the target. I'll bring it in, I'll hit my D so I can see where my numbers are, and I'll bring it in to where it's a converged activity so that the letters, and I'm gonna act like I'm, like the computer screen was behind you, so that the letters are in between me and the screen, okay? So if the VTS4 was beyond the camera and I'm looking at the VTS4, I've got the glasses on, all those letters are now spiral angled out towards me. And what that allows us to do is, again, on that ball or standing, I'll do this one standing up, I can give them 2 dowels and they can go back and forth, or they can have 1 dowel and we'll find the A and we'll localize. So this is giving more of a localization of 1 pinpoint versus numerous pinpoints. And they'll do A, and then they'll do B, and then they'll do C. Just like I do with vectograms, now I'm doing it with the VTS4. If I want to load it, they can do the opposite. So if I have 2 dowels, they're doing the opposite leg as they're touching this. This gives me an idea if vestibular work or motion causes them to lose binocularity. I can also add a cognitive load. Instead of saying the letters, they could do apple and then baseball and then all these different ones. I'll take 2 pointers. If we're doing it really close, I'll give them a small pointer. This is just like a pickup stick. Okay, so if I'm bringing it out to where everything is right here within arm's length, okay, give them 2. And then if they put this on the A and they put this one on the B, do they see the difference in depth? Is A closer than B? Or are they touching all at the same level of depth, okay? So these are ways that you can load that. You're still in Stereopsis 2, you're just changing the type of chart. One is more peripheral with a physical central target, but not a lot of detail. This one has a lot of maybe not detail like color or something like that, but it is an accommodative check, which is gonna hit that parvocellular pathway, and that's what you're doing. You're keeping that gross peripheral fusion stimulating the magno, right? But now we have a parvo central target that we're having to localize. Each of these activities And you can mix it up. Each of these activities are going to be working on either amplitude, and basically amplitude, how far they can come in, how far they can go out, working on localization, keeping track of where they're at. You're adding either physical, vestibular loads, cognitive loads. On this, I've also added accommodation loads, okay? So you can do BOP and BIM activities, giving them a little bit of plus when they're base out, give them some plus. When they're base in, give them some minus, so there's a little bit of separation between the two systems. But another activity that you're going to want to do is going over here, and it's called multiple choice vergences, okay? So now you can do just base in or just base out, right? And over here on the corner, you can pick which one you're going to be using. I tend to use this stereopsis, and then I like the frog, okay? Some people don't like the frog. I like the frog. The reason I like the frog is the numbers are consistent, the spacings are consistent, and you kind of get it, once you get it figured out, it's easier for you as a therapist to kind of know which one they are. But the frog has a number at the top, 1, 3 is at the bottom, 2, and 4, okay? And so now they're gonna have the controller, and what I basically tell them, you know, they're sitting there on their yoga ball, they're looking at this, do you see depth? And they should see one number that is popping closer than the other number. And so then I just ask them, I go, okay, up, down, left, or right, pick the number that's closest to your sight, okay? So just a little rhyme. Up, down, left, or right, pick the number closest to your sight. And so their job is because they're looking through the glasses, they're able to see which number is popping out, and they can hit that number, okay? And then if they look, they can see what the next one is, and they can hit that. And as they're going through, they're just picking the number that fits what they're seeing, okay? Down here, it shows me where they're at. So I can literally watch them, and you know, if I'm doing base out and they're not getting anything, okay, they miss, and then all of a sudden they get it at base in, okay, so maybe they get it in at base in diopter 1 or 2, okay, then all of a sudden now they have it, now they can start to converge in, and now they're at base out, and they get all the way to that 13, 14, or 15. Well, why didn't they get the base out at 0? Probably because they're a little bit exophoric, right? They're posturing out a little bit, and so it took the machine of missing to get it out to where their eyes were naturally crossing. And then once they had it, they had the ability to converge their eyes in, because we've already done dog and ring. We've already taught them how to follow that ring in and follow that ring out. This is how quickly can you get that stereopsis, okay? How quickly can you recognize it after it changes? Because it's gonna be at 1, if they get it right, it's gonna jump in. If they get that right, it's gonna jump in. So instead of just being a smooth transition where they can hold vergence all the way through, now they have to step that vergence, okay? Or they have to step that divergence. Now, whether you're doing base in or whether you're doing base out, okay, this is still working on amplitude, because they're just doing one. They're either coming in converging or they're going out diverging, and it's just step, 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 okay? Or step, 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 step. But they're just breaking that down, and they're having to do it a little bit quicker. So this is kind of an intermediate step from smooth vergences of just following something to now the next one is we're going to go out to the main menu. And down here, they have what's called jump ductions, okay? Now, jump ductions allow you to do base out and base in simultaneously, okay? And I set it up for step at the top, base in and base out. You can do it on the frog to get them started. So now they're going to converge, diverge, converge, diverge, converge a little bit more, diverge a little bit more, converge even more, diverge even more. And so it's just going to be that basic step back and forth. And this is that facility, okay? So Divergence insufficiency is they can converge in, but they have a struggle diverging back out, or they get to one place and they kind of lock, okay? Well, they can also have some divergence in facility, whereas as they converge, it's harder and harder for them to relax their eyes out. So by doing this, I can have them converge, diverge. When they converge and then they have to go back to divergence, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can't get it. Now's your opportunity to say, what did your eyes feel like when they were diverged last, okay? Can you feel your eyes going to that relaxed posture? Can you feel your eyes looking through and looking far? And as they look through and they look far and they're like, oh, I got it. Now you say, okay, now remember that feeling, because we're going to converge. Think about where your eyes were crossed last. You're going to jump right back to that spot. Now it clicks, they have to converge, they jump in and they feel that. Now you're going to have to do the same thing. Throw your eyes out, throw it out there, okay? So that now they get that flexibility, that facility to be able to feel, I'm going to converge, therefore I'm going to cross my eyes, I'm going to bring them in. I'm going to diverge, therefore I'm going to throw my eyes out, and they get that feeling going back and forth. And you can do that with the frog, just like you did with the other. Or over here on the right-hand side, we have RDS, which is Randot. And what I like about this is it gives you less information, okay? Again, I can make the size larger, or I can make the size smaller. And as I go through therapy, I'm adjusting this size on how well they have fusion, how much I'm wanting to work versus the gross peripheral versus starting to get it a little bit more central. The letter in the middle allows for them to have a little bit of a feedback or a target that's there, but probably very hard to see. But if you have a VTS4, you have a screen that is a computerized random dots, okay? But then there's one box that is in that, which is either going to be up, down, left, or right, okay? And that box is going to be elevated towards the patient, okay? It's going to be popped out towards the patient, whether they're converging or diverging, it's going to pop out. And so now, since we don't have, this is going even more virtual, more non-concrete, because there's not a frog, there's not a picture, it is just random dots. And do I see the dot, the square that is popped out towards me differently than I see everything else that's around? So now they're going to converge, get it, diverge, and they're just going to be pushing up, down, left, or right, depending on where that box is and which box looks like it's popping out, okay? So this is a huge, from the very beginning of just sitting there and kind of sensing that depth is happening, to go into a dog in the ring where they're looking at movement, they're seeing the movement, whether it's left and right or it's forward and back, they're identifying the size change, they're identifying space where it is and they're touching it. Then they're going to letters and they're touching the actual letters and spelling them out in that converged state, using their cognitive loading, adding BOP and MEM, all those different things. And then they're working through that amplitude of how far they can jump in, how far they can jump out, to where now they're jumping in, jumping out, jumping in, jumping out. And at the same time, again, you can add BOP and BIM to this to give a little flexibility between that accommodation and vergence system. So another way to load it. But once they get to here, they should be their own coach. They should be able to tell themselves, I'm converging in, I know how to do that. I'm diverging out, I know that how to do that. You should be able to, at any time, be able to say, okay, you just did that one. How did you do it? Did you converge? Did you diverge? And they should, by this time, have that feeling of the flexoconvergence, the feeling of relax of divergence, and that tonal feeling or the proprioception of their eyes to be able to know what it feels like. And as they go through, and then all of your numbers and everything are there at the bottom to tell you, okay? So that's kind of the stages, or the way that I go through that. I'm gonna switch camera here. All right, and Okay, so hopefully you can see me now. And any questions? Okay, well, I'm not hearing any, and so I fear that that's probably because somehow, some way, we lost the ability for you guys to speak. So I will guarantee next time I will work on that. I will look and see if it's an option that I put in there that is not allowing you to hear me or to speak. So the question just came in. Do you change the distance on the VTS4 from 30 to 36? Yes, on ours I do. So on the for those of you that haven't used it, you can actually set up the viewing distance, and so on ours we have it set up at 36 inches. Good question. All right, any other questions? My whole goal on this one, and I hope that everything that you do in this, don't rush it. It's not how fast you want to hear it, to hurry this through. Again, it's personal recognition. It's their personal exploration. Just take that time. To me, the yoga ball is really important because you don't want them just sitting in a chair like they're gaming. Okay, you want to take that out. So at least have them standing, but have them have the ability to really notice movement, direction of movement, size of movement, and then localization, and then work on that flexibility to where they can jump in and out, and it's just by their own will, their own way, and they have it. And that's going to really affect, for especially your convergence insufficiencies, that they will have that ability to converge and then diverge back and forth. Okay. All right. Well, any other questions one last time? All right, it'll take a little bit. We'll get this up hopefully onto the YouTube channel later this week or first of next week. And if somebody you know that wasn't able to watch it, they can watch it there. And I hope you have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.